pretty good, but I'm writing crap copy and I need to outsource this, or, you know, for somebody who's not a professional copywriter but wants to take a stab at it, how do you tell if you're hitting it?
Well, I think it depends on what you're writing. If you're just writing a blog post, I wouldn't really sweat it too much. If you're writing full web content, I would just say go with a professional, honestly. But blog posts, I mean, I think that there's a lot of room for that, and I think that people get really hung up on blog posts unnecessarily. I think that if you're writing consistently and it's not full of typos and it's coherent and it's pertinent to your business, you're doing a good job, especially if you're doing it regularly. So I think that people get really stressed out about blogging and they don't really need to. So I think that if you're writing something that's focused and on task, you're doing a good job, especially if you're doing it consistently. But that's only to blog posts. I just want to say that. That's not to full web content. That's not to ad copy. So this image is a poster I created that it's for sale. It makes a great Christmas gift if anybody wants to buy it. And it just has to do with web content and copy. And you'll probably notice I used the words content and copy sort of interchangeably. Web content primarily deals with the web and websites. But I think a lot of the ideas are interchangeable. So I just want to talk about a couple of the ideas. First of all, content and copy is customizable. I think that if you are a copywriter and you turn in a draft to your clients, I mean, how many people have sent in a draft to their clients and they completely freak out? That's happened to me several times. And I think that the important thing to remind our clients is that they're words, they can be changed. And as long as you work in 2 or 3 edits into your project price, it's no big deal. So I think that the asset with words and design and things like that is that it's customizable. We can change it, and that's okay. Content is always changing, especially with the web. I think it's important to just kind of have a dynamic approach to your content and revisit it every few months, just to keep kind of a fresh face and just to make sure that what you're talking about is still relevant and still interesting, especially if you work with the web, because obviously things just change so fast. Content is never verbose. Nothing good ever came from being verbose, especially with web content. When you write something, write it out and then try to cut it in half and see where that gets you, because you can usually say what you're saying in half the words that you're using. And I think, lastly, educational, informational, and interesting. Above and beyond everything other than your call to action, your copy needs to tell your clients or your client's audience what you do and how you do it, and it needs to do so in an interesting way. So I just would keep those 3 things in mind. So that's the presentation that I have. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah?
To what extent do you collaborate with designers as you are writing your copy?
I wish I did it more. A really great thing that's happening now with a lot of really great web design and development companies is that they realize that content and design should work in tandem. Because like I said, content, the way it looks, is just as important as what it says. So a really great web design company will have content and design work together. But a lot of times, if I'm working for a mom-and-pop company or something like that, and they just need some content, the design's already done, and they know where they want the content to go, and I just need to plug it in. Which isn't necessarily bad, but the best web projects I've been a part of use content and design as kind of the same thing, and they work really closely together.
So, as a follow-up, if you are given design that you're plugging in, you use that design as a part of your process?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's helpful sometimes because, you know, you can see where the headlines go. Or if there aren't any headlines, you can say, why aren't there any headlines? You should have some headlines. So it's definitely helpful. But, you know, so there's a time and a place for it. But.
So you say not to be verbose, but I work for Dell as a product marketer, so we've got product brochure templates that we have to fit in, and there's only so much I can say about a printer. I've got this much copy space I'm supposed to fill, and nobody reads it anyway, so...
We look at the price.
Yeah, so, I mean, what...
Yeah.
How I've gone back and forth with an agency about this, you know, trying to make this not fit. Any tips for that other than pounding our brand people to say, go give it a template?
I mean, I would definitely recommend that. Go to whoever's designing it and say, listen, it's not working, this is bad. I mean, as far as filling up the words, I think that's kind of an issue that all copywriters deal with. It's really tough when you have to write 300 words on something that should only be said in 100 words. That's kind of, but if you're a copywriter, I mean, that's kind of your job. You're kind of supposed to be good at that, unfortunately.
Would it be worthwhile for them just to do a focus group and see what people are reading on their content? I mean,
They should be doing that.
content is a
I'm
product,
not
you should know what you're, and
You'd be surprised what a Fortune 50 company won't pay for.
I used to work for
Yeah, and I'm not a marketing analyst, but I would definitely recommend focus groups and kind of revisiting that. And it seems like you already are doing that, so.
Well, I would love to, I wish I could, but
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing, sorry, back.
How often do your clients ask you to repurpose content for multiple venues?
Kind of define what you're asking. What do you mean multiple venues?
So, a lot of content can be cut down and reused for, let's say, blog copy, ad copy, social media copy. Is that something that a lot of clients ask?
Definitely, because it's more cost effective. And that's kind of the unfortunate reality of it, is that, you know, a lot of clients want really great copy, but they don't necessarily know what that means or what that costs. So yeah, they definitely ask me to repurpose it, and I won't do it. I mean, there are different ways to say the same idea, especially if you're selling one product, but I won't take a blog post and reuse a sentence for that to make a Twitter bio or something like that. It's just not a good idea. And not to mention the fact that it creates duplicate content issues, which I just don't mess around with, so. Sure.
I think probably the most important thing that you said in your entire presentation was your point about a call to action.
Mhm.
I think that, well, let me say this first. One thing that Dan Kennedy talks about, he's a direct response marketing guy. He says that there must always be an offer, and there must always be a call to action. And then there must always be clearly defined instructions on how to take advantage of that offer and follow up with that call to action. And so, you know, when it comes to writing out, whether it's a one-liner or an entire paragraph or a whole web page, you know, tell me who you are, tell me what you're about, and tell me how I can take advantage of it. That's really the key there, transitioning from me knowing who you are to how I can actually take advantage of what you have to offer. And if your copy's not doing that, then, in Dan Kennedy's opinion anyways, it's really wasting time.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things, product pages are particularly tricky because, you know, Google likes to have 300 words on a page, and who's one of them wants to read all that stuff about a printer. One of the ways to get around that is to incorporate customer reviews into the actual text of the page. So if you have reviews, whether they're from you know, Amazon or you know, when people review things, it's part of there is actually fine print that says you can use that in other places. And so that way you use different reviews on each page, you don't have duplicate content, and you just have to, you know, transition from here's the product description, which shouldn't be the same as other product descriptions. Here's, you know, people love this printer, block quote, you know, here's how you get it. And that you know, that gives you something, it gives you another chance to optimize for product review, that specific, you know, this printer product review.
Yeah, you guys should write that down.
So that's one way at it without having to redesign the template and explain to them why it's not working, is you just expand the idea of what can go on that page, but it has to be consistent. You can't just do it for one or two. And, you know, it's but low work, which people never get. But that's what I would recommend as an interim measure until thinking evolves.
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of us are having to wear a lot more hats in our work.
Mhm.
I'm not a writer by training. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations or places that we could go to try to be better at writing, to make writing come easier for non-writers?
Well, start in places like this because you get a lot of information. And when I first started out as a freelancer, I went to bar camp or pod camp. I can't remember. I think pod camp's in the spring, right? So it must have been pod camp. And I mean, there's such a wealth of knowledge in your own community that you can take advantage of. So I would definitely start there. Sure.
Just to address your question and for the benefit of the entire audience, a guy by the name of Jeff Goins. He's a popular blogger, local here in Nashville, and he has a website that is specifically dedicated to helping people develop their craft as a writer. And he has a really outstanding writing course that you can take advantage of. It's online, and you can do it at your own pace. So if you go to Jeff Goins, Goins, writer.com, that's it's a great resource that I found to help you improve your skills as a writer.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Jeff is really smart. He is a really good resource for instructional writing. Any other questions? Yes. Mhm. An infographic is, I mean, for lack of a better example, it's kind of like this, and it's just a way to showcase an idea or a group of statistics in a very design-heavy sort of way. I can't really think of a
It's
very
for those whose Adderall prescription has run out.
Or it's a way to present data.
Sorry, but.
Swapping text for picture.
Essentially. Any other questions?
I was thinking of
I was just saying about the infographic thing. I'd rather think of it, I mean, yeah, but as if you have to look, you're looking at something and you just have to look at it for some reason, you don't really care that much about it. You know, if it's something you really care about, you'll read all this stuff. If it's something you're just like, well, I need to find this one thing out, you know, that's what
I've seen it used to really good effect to,
Yeah.
to showcase a company culture, for example. It's more value added information and not, here's stuff you really need to know, but it gives you sort of an idea of the tone of the company and whether you want to work with them or buy their product or that
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
And people also use them to share a lot because people love to share infographics on how much Americans drink coffee, and people will pass that around a lot. So a lot of people will develop them.
I think they
Plus,
Hoping people
I mean, you
share
may
it.
not know what you don't know, so to say that you just read to glance over it is kind of, sorry, arrogant. But, I mean, that you see, it could be actually worthy. I mean, there's the information, but I certainly don't want my copy or whatever I create to go to a client and they're just going to glance over it either, because I'm the expert in the moment. So,
Right, and in a lot of cases, infographics,
But I don't want to just get down to a price where they basically say, how much are you? There's no value add there.
No, and I mean, if you're talking about web content, a lot of them are indexed as images anyway, so the words there, the content isn't really working for you necessarily, so, I mean, but there's a time and place for them. Yes, sir.
Just a comment, I've worked as a data analyst, and infographics have a lot of value in helping data turn into a story. And that's where I can see a huge value in infographics. Is you have dry, boring data that nobody really wants to pay attention to. But you can wrap it into a story and turn it into something that draws the reader in to data that otherwise would pay attention to. That's
Right.
really where I see a huge value in infographics. And yeah, they do have a little bit of an adult tendency to trying to be lost quickly, but if you have data that people otherwise wouldn't pay any attention to at all, it really is a great way to add a story there that causes the reader to care about the data and not pay attention to it.
Absolutely, and I think the moral of the story here is that somebody needs to do a bar camp session on infographics. So it's obviously generated a lot of discussion.
I'll do it next year after.
Okay.
We'll have a case study to see what that
Sounds good. All right.
But, how did you deal with when you get a client who kind of has no idea what they want, and there's no kind of free, they just sort of they're like, do this, and make it good, that kind of. That's
So every client?
Well, but if it's an established thing, you at least have a starting point. There's, if it's something where you just really are like, they don't know what they want, and it's a new thing.
I think that at that point, you really just need to kind of get a good read on them, and just in the initial meetings, don't just have one meeting, have 2 or 3 meetings, and kind of just get a read on them. And depending on their business, I think that you can kind of just couple their personality with their business, and just kind of think about what sticks out to you about their business and their personality, assuming it's not something really corporate where they really want to showcase their personality, and just kind of think about what would make you want to buy those products. Like if you, and a lot of times, especially here in Nashville, I think that there's so many interesting businesses that you can kind of just pinpoint that one thing that's like something that you really want to showcase. It's hard to explain it more than just kind of feel it, as much as that sounds like a cop-out, but you just kind of need to talk to them a lot and think about their business a lot and just kind of combine the two in a way. And again, don't be afraid to experiment. Okay, I think that is all we have. Thank you guys so much. You guys